The views expressed on this podcast are Peter Dekom's opinions based on his legal experience, research, and academic work. The podcast does not offer legal advice. For any legal matters, always consult an independent attorney who can assess your specific situation. And now, on with the show.
Oh, look who's showing up on the screen.
Hi.
It's Amanda Fleming. She looks much bigger than I. I got you a little chair there where you can whirl. Okay, here we go. Okay, we're here, and Amanda is going to make my life something where between living hell and just a pile of shit. Go for it, Amanda.
Never.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so you recorded an episode prior to the Netflix bid, and now you're recording this episode kind of as everything's unfolding. Do you plan to do another episode after everything pans out?
I suspect I'm having an episode right now. I think there's going to be continual updates because it's not like there's just one thing happening here. You're watching the Supreme Court reconfigure the United States. It's amending the Constitution of the United States without going through the constitutional amendment process. We have this is a little, maybe you don't know this, maybe you do know this. What was the last constitutional amendment passed in the United States? Hint, 1992 was the 27th Amendment, which basically said, Congress, you can't give yourself a raise unless there's an intervening election. Okay, that's not a very controversial amendment, but it was first proposed in 1789. It took over 200 years to pass, and the passage process for a constitutional amendment is massive. So what has happened is the Supreme Court has decided, okay, we know that we're not going to be able to amend the Constitution, so we'll interpret it into oblivion. You have an activist court that makes the most activist court we ever had in the past seem like a placebo. That's not going on now. You're having a Supreme Court that is by interpretation de facto amending it, superseding Congress, superseding precedent, and basically saying, we're going to tell you what the Constitution means. Ignore the words. We're going to tell you what they really meant. And you have a concept called originalism, which says, I can only tell you what the Constitution means by looking at the historical context at the time it was passed. That's bullshit. Because that means the Constitution cannot grow and change the way the Constitution was intended to grow and change. So now you're looking at, what am I going to do? All these variables are running around. There are midterms coming up. I have no idea how this is going to affect everything. I just absolutely will react to it. I'll give you my opinion. I'll give you the legal background on stuff. We'll see more of this as it evolves. But I will tell you the collective bargaining, I don't think there's going to be another strike. I think the industry has a strike every 4 to 5 bargaining sessions. Each bargaining session is 3 years. So I don't think we're going to see a strike. But a lot of people are going to bitch and moan. And the big issue that everybody is facing in the United States is health care, and there's only one solution for it. We'll talk about that at another time, but all yours.
Well, I look forward to hearing about all of that from you. Okay, my next question is, you told us that you think Paramount will win, and you discussed that. But if you got to have a hand in this and dictate how it should unfold, who should be the winner, how would you do it?
Well, number one, I think the priority for me would to find some way to keep the integrity of the Warner Brothers Motion Picture Group as a separate unit, maybe even required to be spun off completely, maybe with HBO Max as a group, and not be subject to acquisition. I don't care what happens with the studio itself. But I think the other thing that you have to worry about is if all the news agencies are slowly being acquired by a political party with a particular perspective, whether you agree with it or don't agree with it, I don't think that's a good idea either. I'm not in favor of having a political party have a traditional mainstream network to reflect. I think Fox has completely destroyed its own credibility. I think it has a place for conservative conversation. I think when you fabricate stuff, as Bongino had just said, when I was employed at Fox, I was paid to lie, and that just came out like crazy. I think at some point the integrity of the press has to be restored. The integrity of the creative process has to be open to more than two or three perspectives. We need more competition, not less competition. So I would probably have an antitrust commission take a look at the motion picture television streaming landscape and try to find a better configuration for it, because I don't think what's going on is healthy.
We have a bid that's expensive and then a hostile bid, which is expensive, and now like a bidding war. And ultimately, the higher the price, as you said, it ultimately ends up costing the consumers more. Do you see any way for this bidding war to not have a price just continually climb until there's out? Like, is there any way to keep this from getting more and more expensive?
The,
Stop the
pu-
escalation?
the public has to start voting with their traditional votes. If they don't like the way the decisions are being made, how the administrative agency are letting this happen, they need to vote against the government that made that happen. Number two, they can vote with their dollars and say, you know what? You just overcharged. I'm signing off. I'm not paying this every month. I can't afford it. And right now is not a particularly good time to decide you're going to raise prices like crazy, because there's a major affordability issue that's out there. And no matter what anybody says, once this medical situation, although Donald Trump has now said, I want the Republicans, Democrats work this out together. Um, the cost of medical care in this country is prohibitive, and we can't compete with other countries where there's universal health care, because they always have less expensive health care than we do, and we always put health care on the products we sell. It's just the nature of the beast. If you have a cost, you pass it on to the consumer one way or the other. And that's what's going on with healthcare. It's going on with everything. And it goes on. If you wanted to pay another $20 a month for more content in your home, good luck with that.
As consumers, especially here in Los Angeles, in Hollywood, how does a person use their vote to not consume entertainment while we're among a community of so many actors and writers and people who depend on this industry for their survival? How do we find that sweet spot?
There's no sweet spot. You don't pay it. Next. You just don't pay it. You ain't got it. You ain't going to pay it.
Okay. So then how do we support our writer friends, our actor friends?
Welfare? I don't think there's an easy answer to any of that stuff, because you have expensive production for a reason. I made my living mostly representing writers and directors and a few actors, and I love them. They are my friends. I fight for them violently. I think that ultimately I respect the creative process so much, but part of this has to be, we don't have union rules. We don't have, like, for example, let's take writers. It used to be that you'd hire a writer, and then sometimes you'd have a writer's room, even a comedy or something. All the writers sit around and they tell whatever, and then they tell one of them, you go and finish this. And the writer's room has been a way that television has been done for a long time. And when you take a writer's room with 5 people in it, and it used to be 22 episodes and it's now 10, look what that does for the industry. And that tends to put pressure to increase the per episode writing compensation, which makes it more expensive it's a mess. We have to balance this out. And there has to be a way where the upside, the risk that people are taking. I'm sorry, studios and networks, you're not the only ones taking a risk. The talent is taking a risk because they're working for you with fewer opportunities to express themselves. And the problem here is, with fewer choices, fewer managers, fewer decisions, people are losing their jobs and they're not finding new ones.
I'm unsettled because I have friend after friend who is at one film festival or another, hustling, working hard, and I don't like the answer. I don't like the answer. I feel like there's got to be a way to support their pursuit while also um, not voting for the monopoly behemoth infrastructure that's happening.
Well, a lot of governments overseas in Europe subsidize writers and directors at the nascent level, which is probably one of the reasons European motion pictures and television productions don't do very well in the overseas marketplace, because if you subsidize something that the government subsidy people like, it doesn't necessarily correspond to what the audience likes. I think part of all this stuff is, if we take some of the reins off of AI, some people will create motion picture and television productions with no actors, but that doesn't help the actors. Ultimately, there's going to be a transition. It will settle out. A lot of people are going to be displaced. There'll be new opportunities. Keep your eye on YouTube, where lower price productions, especially catering to people who have shorter attention spans, Gen Z and younger. But if you really want to look at who's suffering the most, it ain't Xers, it's Gen Z. Gen Z is saying, wait a minute, there's no work for us. Every time there's an opportunity, it gets snapped out from us. And as we come out of school, graduating from colleges, universities, or even still going there, there's no place for us to go. So part of this for us is to understand that either we're going to become a unified United States of America, or we're just called States of America because we ain't unified. Or united, I guess, would be okay.
So you mentioned when somebody makes a deal with Netflix, there's no upside for that person, whether it's a writer, or anybody who's on the production side, because then Netflix does the production in-house. Is that right?
If there's a structure for additional compensation on success, it either takes the form of a markup at the inception of the production. In other words, if it costs me $100 to make something, I'll pay you $115. You have $15 going in, and that substitutes for the upside. Or I have a bonus structure. Apple has you can actually print out all the A tier, B tier, C tier, D, etc., at what they pay. And Apple does something that other streamers don't do, and that is they actually take into consideration if your creation becomes sort of an iconic evergreen. So yes, you get these bonus structures, but do you participate in the revenue stream? No.
Is there any way that a creative can structure from idea to product to then production? Is there any way they can structure a way to get an upside or keep an upside or create an upside for themselves?
Not if you're selling to a streamer. I mean, the reality is what you hope is you can get the rights reverting to you after a certain amount of time, and then do whatever you want with them. But a lot of these streamers won't let you take that reversion. I fight very hard for reversion of rights from creative people. I think it's very, very important, because once a studio buys something, it doesn't want to be embarrassed that they didn't produce a sequel and you did, and you made money and they didn't. The embarrassment factor is present in all these deals, wherever you go. But the reality, I mean, there are ways to measure it. One of my favorite people in this area, I actually invited her to speak at a conference in Vegas for the American Bar Association Sports and Entertainment Forum, of which I am a member. And I chaired this, and I asked her, she works for Puck. She's in New York City. She works for Parrot Analytics. Her name is Julia Alexander, and she is remarkable in explaining what the values are and how you can measure them on an objective basis, so that if you want to pay an upside generating direct correlation between success and revenues, she can do it. I listened to her do it, and I think she's amazing. She was a Puck also. She writes for Puck.
Okay, where is the hope for all of our friends out here in Hollywood between the political factors that are at play with regulations and this purchase that's going to be happening and just all the other factors that you mentioned? Where's the glimmer of hope for all of our artists and intellectuals who are pursuing their dreams, but also their expertise in an area that has entertained us forever?
You're going to hate my answer. Nobody gives a shit.
I do care.
You don't have, and then write a check. Start hiring these people with your money. If you don't have the money, you don't give a shit either, because this takes money to pay people's salaries to live on, etc. And until we recognize that this stuff doesn't grow on trees, what I recommend for a lot of creative people to do, and I think, become an expert at marketing and selling. If you can learn about, in other words, I remember when someone came to me and they spent $12 million making a feature film, and they said, here it is. Take it, Peter. What are we going to do with it? I said, okay, you've done 5 to 10% of the work. Now we have to get someone to put in millions and millions of more dollars, and they count what you spent as zero. And you're asking them to pay 20, 30, 40, 50 million dollars to market your content. Kind of missed it all over. So I would have to say we live in a world where there's social media, where influencers are sliding backwards. They're having less and less influence. People who are out there and believe I make content, and when I make it, it's so wonderful, people will want to see it. The problem is they don't. So you have to find a way to market and reach these people. The people, my son once asked me many years ago, when he was like 13 years old, I asked him, what is a good idea worth? And he said, it could be billions. I said, life lesson 1, the best idea anybody has ever had is worth 0. Huh? He looked at me with a quizzical face, and I said, look, the people who made the money are the ones who identify the ideas and know what to do with them. Those who implement make money. Those who think them up don't. Unless they can also figure out a way to implement them. So I say to the creative world, learn about marketing. Don't sit there and say, here, agent, sell it. Understand the whole process of attracting an audience.
Okay. You mentioned that.
Is that a knife in your hand? Are you slitting your wrist? What's going on here?
No.
Oh, okay.
This is Dekom Law and Possibilities. We're looking for hope, and
I gave you one. Marketing, learn how to do it.
And this is what we want to spread. Regarding cultural wars, if you think about a war and it comes down to leverage and resources, in this cultural war in entertainment, where's the leverage, and how can the little guys, what can they bring to this battlefield?
All right, let me tell you, once upon a time there was a country, and it basically, a bunch of very senior people marched a long way over a year and formed a country in the late 1940s. And they basically had a leader named Mao Zedong, and they basically had a culture. It was a communist culture. And it was based upon a little red book, a lot of slogans, a lot of, you got to be loyal or we're going to kill you. And they fought the biggest cultural war ever. It went through the 1950s, it went to the 1960s, a Great Leap Forward program, almost bankrupted the country. They eventually threw Mao Zedong and said, okay, go have sex with your 12 and 14-year-old. And they did do that. And leave us alone, you're out. This is in the mid-1960s. And Mao Zedong said, okay, I'm going here, and convinced all the young people to have a culture war where they basically pulled down all their professors, pulled down all the managers within the country, basically sent everybody out into the farms to be re-educated, and the country economically collapsed. Culture wars with blind loyalty to leaders, etc., always fail because they're not adaptive. They're rigid structures predicated on things that don't work. So in 1981, a guy named Deng Xiaoping took over, and he opened up the country to sort of the Chinese version of capitalism. They built infrastructure. They created jobs. Professors were revered. Research was elevated. Exactly the opposite of what's going on in this country. And they took 1 billion human beings out of poverty in less than half a century. And that was Deng Xiaoping, and China kept building on and on and up. What the United States is doing is our culture wars are taking away the things, the sparks, the soul that motivate those who create new stuff. And now we're pushing all our money into AI. As I keep saying, the way you pronounce AI is I. And I am very unhappy. The culture war will not benefit this country one iota. It's tearing us apart, and the Chinese are having the best time. Everyone says, well, they've got economic problems, yes, but they have the greatest dollar value, another $1 trillion of exports back to where they were. They're breaking records. They're doing better than they've ever done. And the United States is not the one basically buying their stuff so much anymore because of the tariffs. So what we're doing is we're saying we abandon the America First policy and we're going to lap dissolve, motion picture term, lap dissolve into a China First policy and let them do whatever they want. That's what we're doing. And I look at this. I've been to China and the area, Hong Kong, Macau, et cetera, 50 times in my life. I've done deals in Hong Kong. I've done deals in China. I've been to Beijing, Shanghai. I've been all over the place doing deals. And I don't like what we're doing. We're handing it to them. And when you go to Saudi Arabia for your money and think that you are not changing the nature of your content to cater to the Saudis, you're wrong. People always take into consideration who's putting the money up. And right now, bad culture, unified culture, lack of the diversity of thinking, creativity is being substituted for the kind of wonderful stuff that we used to do when a lot of different voices created different songs.
Okay, this question could lead to a long answer, probably a whole episode. So just
again.
in a nutshell, how did Hollywood start, and what piece of information from its inception could we draw upon now for this moment?
A bunch of Jewish business people from Odessa came to a place called New Jersey. You may have heard of New Jersey. It's near a city called New York. And they decided they were going to make this new thing called movies. And until then, you basically had little machines that made motion pictures. You looked into a viewer and you saw it. And they started making these things in New Jersey but they also found that the light in New Jersey was not particularly good. So where can we go where there's lots of light and more of it? Well, how about California? Where would we go there? How about Los Angeles? So they all trooped over to Los Angeles. They're paying nothing for movies. And actors were doing stuff, and actors got to be so famous, they financed their own movies. And so we got eventually United Artists. We have a lot of things. We built that up organically, literally over 40 or 50 years. Are we starting over again? We might. But the one thing you can't take away from people is a spark of creativity. And I will say that people at studios are terrified to make decisions. CYA, cover your ass. Explain why you're greenlighting something, not because you think it's great, not because the writing is stellar, but because somebody who the industry thinks is a genius likes it or is willing to participate in it. Or it's a best-selling book, so we've already proven the concept. Or. Somewhere out of all this, Walt Disney had a little mouse named Mortimer, became Mickey. Everybody took a chance. It's the chance takers on creativity who built the world. And we're in a place today where you can still do that, where you don't have to have the most expensive sets in the world. One of the things, I had a conversation with one of the most famous actors in the industry. I won't mention his name, but the actor, director, brilliant guy. And he and I have been friends for a lot of years. And I said to him, "You're a chicken shit." And he said, "What do you mean?" I said, "You are one of the best character director writers I have ever met. Your work is incredible, but you don't do any special effects stuff." I don't like a leg. And I said, "You don't realize the hard part with all these special effects movies, they don't have heart. You direct actors. You make the stuff on the screen make people feel. That's what it's all about." So I said, the technological stuff is done by the time you go on the set. You've got production designers, you got special effects people. But nobody makes the actor soar like an eagle. Only you do that, and you do it better than anybody I know. Still, chicken shit, they didn't do it.
Thank you. So heart, feelings, connection, that seems like it could be anyone and could be the solution to winning any war.
I think that, making small vignette things for YouTube and developing a reputation for knowing how to hit a heartstring or pull out a yuck, and you build that reputation, that is a path. So, you know what, whether it's Vermo or, whatever you want to do, said that wrong, Vimeo, but it matters where you put it. It matters how you embrace your friends on social media to watch it. Hey, everybody, tell everybody about this podcast. Best thing you ever seen. You want to see more of it, you should see it. Hint, hint, hint. I finished my marketing now. Okay. But the name of the game is basically, if you see something you like, tell people about it. Pass the word. Word of mouth is the greatest marketing force in the universe. And if you do that, you're helping the creative world. You're helping creative talent. I suspect we're going to see some sort of Kickstarter campaigns, go fund me, go make fun of me, whatever it is. I like the idea that we decide to support someone, and then you, the talent, remember who got you there, and remember that you're trying to be better, you're trying to entertain, connect, etc. The only thing I got to say for all the positive thing that I've seen through all of this stuff in a big way is the rise of documentaries. And I don't mean reality programs, which have nothing to do with reality. I'm talking about taking on a serious subject like the Civil War or the Revolutionary War, or perhaps how people who were in Tulsa when a whole bunch of white people decided to kill a bunch of black people. I think making things that explain and show. One of my favorite shows is, who built this? How do we build this? I mean, I like the Smithsonian Channel. I think that shows you how old I am. But ultimately, I like to see how did Coca-Cola get so big? And there's shows about that, and they're compelling. They're really interesting because you have crazy-ass people doing crazy-ass stuff, fighting crazy-ass other people, and somehow through all that insanity, a new product arises. I mean, think about Blockbuster video, and then say a prayer, and then think about Netflix. Blockbuster could have been Netflix. They chose to stay with what they thought would work. The minute you think you've solved the world's problem, the only thing I can tell you is there's somebody waiting in the wings to do it better and differently.
So embrace change, adhere to some resilience, be adaptable.
How about don't embrace change, don't ignore change. Be yourself, but create good stuff. I mean, if what you're worried about is how do I compete, well, what are you competing with? I'm more interested in what you're doing with, but that you're ready to embrace marketing techniques to take that good thing that you created. If all you're doing is trying to fill a market niche and you don't have a passion for what you're doing, forget about it. It doesn't matter. Marketing is how you take what is wonderful and share it with others. How do you do that? How do you convince people that what I've done is wonderful? Back in my early days of law practice, I would have people come to me, I got this script, it's better than E.T., it's better than Star Wars, it's better, whatever. And everybody says that, and the minute you say that, you have no credibility whatsoever. You have a big light bulb in your head. I'm an amateur, I'm an amateur, I'm an amateur, I have nothing to give you, I just parrot things and make it. It doesn't work what your opinion of your work is. It matters that the work is good and that it is unique, different, and carries your signature.
Thank you, Peter.
Did I instill hope by accident? Oh, no. But I want hope. I love writers. I love creative people. You're wonderful. All of you.
If you would like to give feedback, suggestions for new topics, or have a question that might be selected for a future podcast, please email us at dekompodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. Until next time.